Hi, it's Katrina Kavanagh here, and I've been wanting to create a message about COVID and the pandemic, and really because as I talk to my clients, particularly over last week, as I talk to my clients, what I'm noticing is that there is a lot of fear and a lot of doubt, and some people are actually quite petrified. They're not sure what's going to be happening for them and for their family, and it goes beyond the medical. There's a lot of people out there talking about this is the end. People are very strong and perhaps um, very strong, maybe extreme Christian beliefs that, sort of saying this is the end of the world, and, we've had the fires and we've had this, and this is what's coming. We've got, a whole lot of theories out there that are about, that there's powers that be that are conspiring, the minority is conspiring against the masses. And, there's a lot of complexity about what goes on for people. And so I wanted to step outside of all of that. There's also all the stuff about vaccination, to vaccinate or not vaccinate, and the great divide that might come between people who are vaccinated and those who aren't, and pressure people are feeling from their loved ones when they're, getting on the phone and saying, come on, I've got beautiful family that say that to me too. But they're also very respectful when I say, look, I don't know what to do yet, so, but in other situations, we've got the champions for vaccine and the champions for anti-vaccine. But all of this is swirling around us, and it is an unprecedented time. So where does it leave us? Okay, so I thought I would offer a perspective. I felt called to offer a perspective from the spiritual perspective, because as I was tuning in for people when I was doing readings with them, and they asked that question, they're asking what it meant for them, consistent themes were coming through. Okay, so I thought I should share them. I should share what I'm getting, and then I'm just one more opinion in the mix. Okay, so to begin with, when I've spoken to people, when I've connected with spirit, and by that I mean whatever you want to call the energy up there, source, God, what do you want to call it? Your spirit guides, if you go through there, it doesn't really matter what you call it. It's just connecting to the non-physical. There's some key things I'm being told. And the first thing is I'm being told that this is all about taking us from out there, outward focus, to inward focus. Because if you think about it, right at the moment, we are all very focused on our bodies, right? We're noticing symptoms. We're constantly focusing on our hands. I mean, when was the last time the world as a collective was actually focused on taking care of their hands, right? Washing their hands and putting a mask on their face. So it's brought us within. It's brought us within our own bodies. We focus there rather than focusing out there. And I understand that that's one of the reasons why COVID, I don't know, is it the reason? It's one of the reasons why it's come through this way is because there was a greater need to focus on our own selves, not our physical bodies, but also our inner selves. Right now across the world, we have people focusing on their well-being, their mental health, and relationships, because we are very suddenly thrust into a situation where the people that are immediately around us, we are looking very closely at that, and we're really noticing how we're feeling about that. So for so many people, this is bringing out the best and the worst in us as humanity, but also down to the individual relationships. In my experience working with death and dying, both physically through my mainstream clinical work, but also spiritually, when I connect with loved ones in spirit, I know that death brings out the best and also the worst. Crisis brings out the best and also the worst in people. So whatever dysfunctional dynamics we carry forward from childhood, when we're stressed, when there's a crisis, that will emerge. Therefore, those of us who are connected more with a sense of peace, connected more with a sense of helping others, and being kind and naturally being present, well, this is a time when we will experience more of that. Okay, I have coffee. And those of us who struggle at times of crisis, when their fear absolutely flourishes, where their anxiety goes through the roof, and perhaps that brings out not the best in you, in the person, they're going to experience that. So we're going to be getting much more clarity. And in fact, clarity is actually one of the things that the COVID crisis, the pandemic, is giving all of us, whether we realize it or not. All of a sudden, we're getting really clear about what we think and feel about our bodies. We're getting very clear about the people around us in our lives and whether they operate from a place of fear or love, and we're seeing that really clearly. Clarity is giving us an opportunity to therefore review how we feel and how we spend time with the people that are in our immediate family, and what it means for us. So every great thing in our relationships are becoming magnified, and any tricky areas in our relationships are also going to become magnified as well. And that's healthy. Healthy. It can be painful, absolutely, but ultimately it's healthy because clarity makes us see very precisely what that person is capable of, both in the positive way and also perhaps in the hurtful way as well. Once we have that information, we get to decide whether we want to lean more in to that person or step right back. So you can see that along the way, there are things that are happening, whether we're conscious of it or not. Okay. The other thing that's really interesting about COVID and this pandemic is that it's making us go and return to ourselves. And I sort of mentioned that earlier, but I want to talk more about that. So when I talk about returning more to yourself, we are all of a sudden becoming very connected to how we're doing, how are we actually doing in life, right? Are we doing what's important to us? Are we filling it up full of meaningless stuff or activities? And look, I like nice things. This is not about material things. This is about how do we spend our time? You know, it's about how. Like, I have a concept I always talk about called meaningful time, and how do we spend our time? And so, you know, this is making us get really clear. We're getting really, really simple. If you think about it, before the Industrial Revolution, we used to be in communities that were very much about getting the food to bring to the table, to spend time with the family. It was a slower way of life and a slower way of living. We couldn't travel far and wide because we didn't have the mechanisms to do that. And so we were very much about who's in front of us, our own daily lives, surviving, getting food on the table, all of that kind of thing. What are we focused on now? So we had the days before the Industrial Revolution, the time of community and the land and daily slow living, I guess you'd call it. We've gone into the Industrial Revolution, which has given us so many gifts and so many wonderful things. I do not want to be scrubbing my clothes on the washing board, let me tell you. And yet now we're finding ourselves very much unable to travel, very much in our community. Our day is full of certainly the work we need to do to earn our living, but also we're very focused on getting food. How do we get food? You know, many of us are planning our shopping trips, or a lot of people are shopping online now. So it's about getting the food, cooking the food, getting the food on the table. So I feel like we're being brought right back to that very slower way of life, and there are very big benefits to that. For the people who are fearful of, you know, that this is the end of the world, my understanding is that it is not. Yet it is a radical change in the way we all think, feel and believe about ourselves and our lives. So years ago, I remember, you know, being part of the spiritual community, talk about the collective consciousness is changing. And I remember thinking, I wonder how that's going to happen. Is it just people aspiring to have a change? And no, it's not. It's not just people aspiring to have a change. We know that people change for two reasons, and one is aspirational, so they want to do something, so they'll change, and the other is through being made to change, through being made to be uncomfortable. And usually that's the most effective way that people change quickly, and they move through and they come out the other side a different person. In real life, that can be death, that can be separation, divorce, that can be a medical crisis. We might have a diagnosis that we have to deal with, or many other significant life events, near-death experience. So I feel that whether it's meant or not, we are really the shift in the collective consciousness, the way we all function as a society, and the way we think, feel, and believe about ourselves and others, and therefore behave towards ourselves and others, is radically changing. And that's the difference that's coming. I don't think there'll be a moment where the ones that have turned themselves over to Jesus are going to float up to heaven, and the rest, anyone who hasn't lived that way from the Christian model, is going to remain. When we talk about concepts of heaven and hell, if you think about it, here on earth, it's a moment of, are we going to turn to love of ourselves, to love of others, to operate from a place of love? Or are we going to operate from a place of fear, of terror, of absolute misery, really? For me, that is an experience of hell on earth, to be in a state of constant fear. But yet, if we operate from a place of love and faith in the collective, faith in people, that there is good in people, that there is good in ourselves, then, and we operate from love ourselves, then it's kind of like heaven, really, isn't it? So I think there's some really broad concepts that are given forward in the Bible about end of time, and I think that can be, this is just my humble opinion, and I really believe that spiritually, that we can have lots of different belief systems operating at the same time and working for individual people. So, I was raised in the church, and I believe strongly in Christianity and faith. And I think everything serves a purpose. So those that need the church for solace, then of course you must go, of course. Those who need to pray and meditate on a mountain, well, please go and do that. Those that sit in their lounge room and drink coffee and send messages out to the world and just focus on the beautiful flowers and pray and meditate in their own way, that's what you need to do too. There's no wrong or right way of doing this, and I think that and all of these belief systems can coexist. The issue is when someone brings about fear in your life. So you might be at the shopping centre and someone that stops you and who's very strong, has a strong religious faith, and they speak about, gosh, this is a sign of the end of the earth. And people feel fearful, and they come away from that conversation feeling very heavy, and it has an impact on their mental health. I don't think that's how God's love is meant to be, and people worrying about why and who's in control is something that, look, very common. I spend my time thinking about that stuff myself. However, we need to be able to come back to ourselves and know what's true and safe about our own lives. Okay, there is a lot of uncertainty, but I believe that through the uncertainty we will be all okay. But are we going to change as a nation, as a world, as a globe? Yes, 100%. Our lives will never be the same again. We'll be creating a new normal. However, I believe that the clarity that will come, for me anyway, will be a clarity about love versus fear, and connection to self and connection to others, empathy for self and empathy for others, and ultimately returning back to where it all begins, which is source and ourself. I hope that helps you to understand where we are right now as we move our way through COVID and the pandemic. we need love for ourselves and each other. It's kind of as simple as that. Take care. Bye bye.